Welcome to Front Street, the surround sound for the underground in Chicago, Illinois. I am your host, Sarah McCool. This week's topic is political art doesn't matter, and I have two Chicago artists, Josue Pellot and Jaxon Pallas here. What do you guys think about that political art doesn't matter? Or that have you encountered that sentiment before, I guess, or have you had that kind of pushback against your work?
I think you have to start with the definition of political art, right?
Okay.
I mean, like that stupid Richard Serra Stop Bush poster, right? That doesn't matter, and that's political because it's directly referencing politics, the way we understand it, right? The presidential race or whatever, and it's got the Abu Ghraib torture and nothing against Richard Serra. I like his other work, but that was really. I don't know. Okay, well, I'll just say it. For me, it was really bad art and bad political art and all of these things, but that's not, I think, what you're talking about when you're talking about political art, right? I think you're talking about more things like this, where Josue is going into a situation, he's interacting with whoever owns the liquor store, grocery, laundromat, and saying, proposing this thing, right? So it's art that does two things. Because all art kind of proposes what art should be, right? So his art's doing that de facto. But then he also has to propose, what does it mean for it to be in this space, interact with the store, interact with the people out on the street, kind of in this sort of political sphere, right? So it has to operate in both in both orbits, right? So then I think when people say political art doesn't matter, they're saying maybe it functions in the real world, but it doesn't matter as capital A art.
Your work seems to be that's specifically trying to create social justice or do something in terms of mediation or specifically change something. Maybe if you want to talk about the project that you were working on now, or what that was about, or
which one?
The one in St. Louis, or
as far as what are the ends? Is there
any? Do you have any work of yours that you think could be described as something that's actually trying to create
Oh yeah, that has actual real world consequences, and we're trying to have outcomes, and we're trying to do things that matter, regardless of the art world, right? I mean, hopefully it traffics in that sort of world, but the barometer of success is in no way contingent on that world, right? It's based on what are the real world outcomes and influences of that, so.
But
is that what you
mean? No, exactly. That's exactly. And I mean, if you could give an example of what you do, but also if you have, you mentioned Richard's this piece that doesn't work, but is there an artist or an art piece that you feel does what you're trying to accomplish? It has done that has created. Is there?
I like Santiago Sierra. Where he tattoos a straight line across 4 prostitutes.
Tell me about that. I try to talk to my students about that. I can never quite explain why that's so important. Maybe you can.
And I don't even know who this person is.
I mean, the way I see it too, it's in my opinion, he completely exploits 4 people who are these drug addicts, and it just puts it into the forefront. The situation of where he's at the moment. That's why I find it so interesting, because then for me I feel like it becomes a debate of what's more important, the fact that he just tattooed a straight line across these 4 people's back, or the fact that there are people out there who are in necessity, and he paid them with I think it was a dose of heroin.
Oh wow!
Each, so he just gave them a dose of heroin. So
that's some political art I can get behind.
And well, he does do a lot of things like that.
Who is it? Can you say his name again?
Santiago Sierra.
I love this. I'm very interested in this, but it's the the snarky person in me is what's the difference between that and bum fights? I mean, I don't
what's the ethical dimension? Yeah.
There's bum fights 12 or 13, 3D. There's I mean, what?
I guess I am the other. September, whenever Hispanic month is, I become the guy they call. So,
well, what is that experience like?
You know, it depends. Sometimes I just, okay, sure, here you go. You know, but yeah, sometimes it is kind of frustrating or just a little annoying, just knowing that like, oh, Hispanic Artist Month, let's find somebody.
Check. I did have a friend at a party one time, and maybe because he was drinking a little bit, he was off base and he was wrong because it hasn't played out that way, the same way that Josue is talking about. But he was like, oh. Curators must love you, and you probably get into a lot of shows because you're a white artist who's talking about black issues. So like that's trendy, and I know how to spin that. So like you're gonna like really that's gonna work out well for it. And I was like, and then he proceeded to fall over and break some things because he was drunk. But I think he was really kind of saying something that was on his mind, and I think that's kind of maybe what you're alluding to a little bit, like. What is your niche market? How do you play off your brand? What's your shtick?
What's your brand?
What's your shtick? No, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Like there are like people, you know, say like the best, you know, feminist work is by like a straight white guy, or like the best like Mike Kelly or something like that, or.
Mike Kelly makes some pretty good work.
Is it feminist? And it's like.
As a feminist, I don't know.
Or like the best black art is made by a white straight guy. Or.
Who says that?
No one says that. Some people I know. I mean.
And I don't think you can appropriate an image, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, maybe in a legalistic term you can. Like this is my image and I have a copyright and someone else uses it. But there's no image out there that belongs to a group, right? Or any sort of identity or community, right? I mean, I don't think those things exist. I think we traffic in a much more complex and interesting world than that. So there's no image that, for example, it would be fine for Josue to be attracted to or use in his work or comment on that would be inappropriate for you or I to. Right? I don't think that works with imagery. I don't think imagery works that way.
I think maybe the way the viewer would interpret an image and then knowing the artist, usually who the artist is, it's a factor in the interpretation of the work.
It is.
So it becomes a tricky thing, I would say. I think one, you would have to be that much more informed of what you're doing. Not to say, you know, if you're black, you can be less informed and use, you know, a black image. But it's just or you'll just get judged on or definitely questioned a lot more if that image doesn't really pertain to who you are as a person outside of an artist. Or at least...
But it works the other way too, because I have a good friend who is a black woman abstract painter, right? And she gets so upset because, you know, she's making these abstract paintings, she's trying to talk about, you know, these really lofty philosophical things, and then everyone wants to like say like, it's about race, or, you know, oh, the color red here is because, and she's like, come on, that's ridiculous, right?
She comes in, it's like, oh, you're black.
It's black art. So it's black art. It's black art. I mean, but it's like, have you ever had the experience where you've liked work more or you've liked work less when you found out the person who was making it, the identity of the person making it?
No, maybe the conversation, but not so much the identity of the person. But if the conversation lacks, that's when I kind of fall off a bit, but never really specific to who they are. I don't think I've really had that experience. Or
work has changed if someone
It happens to me more with gender, where someone has a unisex name, and maybe you would attribute it, and you're like, oh, this is, you know, this is, and then you're like, oh, Jan is in Jan. It's
you're like, oh no, fuck you.
Not that changes the work, but maybe you do have that. I don't know.
Well, if I didn't know you, I would debate like whether you were black or Hispanic, based off your website. You know, based off like the imagery I saw in the work and the non-for-profit, right? What is it? It starts with.
Art y Más.
I'm sorry.
Art y Más?
Art y Más, you're right. Right.
So, I didn't choose that name if you're going to critique that.
No, I'm just saying, but like from seeing it, you know, you go from like what's available.
Is there anything that you either would have a problem with or have had an issue with, like in terms of like political work or identity work or something that you thought was like, you know, sexist or racist or just stupid or I don't know.
Someone who thinks I think does a good job. So that's kind of the opposite.
Okay, no, okay. What does he do? Okay.
Is Ryan Trecarton.
Oh my God! Oh, I adore that
And
man.
I really love the way that
I love
he
him.
treats all of these sort of different identities as totally in flux and totally malleable and changeable, and just you put them on the way you would a shirt and you take it off and you change it and it doesn't matter. And I think that that's really something, a good model to look toward.
Like what? I mean, I kind of have an issue with white people with dreads. I do. I kind of have a problem. Like not a problem, but just stylistically, I don't know. Doesn't matter. I don't care.
But you can be snarky about anyone for doing anything,
Okay,
right? And that's fine.
Okay.
You don't have to like it, but what is the problem?
What is,
there,
yeah,
you
what
know?
is the problem? Yeah.
You know,
Is there a problem?
So you're just saying I probably am not going to befriend that person.
No, I don't know. I'd be friends with anybody.
That's
No.
fine. You don't have to.
That's a good point. I mean.
Okay.
It was
On the topic of hair and appropriation, I do not have a problem with white folk with dreads because they're probably listening to a lot of Bob Marley and everything. They're into their culture. I have a problem with white folk on cruises who go to Puerto Rico and get braids in their hair and everything.
I knew it could get something like that.
I do have a problem with that.
See?
Because I think that's ridiculous.
No, that's like buying a souvenir. It's like, here's a frog and a flag and $15.
So much for staying with us. Thank you for our 3 guests.
25, right? 25.
No.